Hello, 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 hello. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, ass. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
What's happening over there? You good?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. No. All good. I
All right.
just.
Sounds a bit odd there. No.
Sorry, I just had some problems with my plug, but it's better now.
I don't know. It's not like you're coming through the microphone. I'm not sure what's going on there.
That's a bit odd.
Yeah, go to your settings. Let's just sort this out.
Yeah.
I love doing this stuff with the audience so they can all feel part of it, you know?
I know. Settings are all good. Maybe I should leave and come back in.
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea. All right.
Alrighty.
Well, let Leigh-Ann leave and come and join us again. She'll be back in a moment. It is Monday. It's 25th of April, the last proper week of April. And then we're into proper winter. I mean, you could, what do they say usually? I always have to do this in my head, but I'm gonna let me show you my work. Where's my pen? You know how you have to show your teacher your work in maths. So what do we got? 12 months. You divide the year into 4 seasons. It gives you 3 months per each season, right? So if we consider that June, July, August is properly winter. Is that right? So then what we probably have is, this is the last month of autumn then.
I always have to start from September.
Yeah, why?
Which is really frustrating.
Yes, because September,
October, November.
Right. No. That's a good place to start because then it's September
definitely spring.
Is first. Yeah, spring day, right? So okay.
September, October, November, December, right. January, February, March,
then
April, May. Yeah. So you're right. June is the first month of proper winter.
Yes. Okay. Got you. It's all right. We still got the month. It was raining when I woke up this morning.
Oh yeah. I do see now. It's a little overcast. Cast over.
Do you look out into a window there?
Yeah, I do. Nice. It's the one window they give me in my jail cell.
What do you mean? Are you in prison?
No, well, sometimes I am in my mind, but no. Remember, this is a horse stable that I live in now. It's an ex-horse stable. So I'll swing you around.
Yeah,
besides the stable door.
Oh, nice! Look at that. Oh,
I only get one other window into the world.
That's nice.
I mean that's just in this part of the house.
I love a stable door. You can leave the top open, and
Well, traditionally, it was called a Dutch door. And it was the builders in Holland who first started using it in about the late 1600s. And
is that because for the Dutch it was all about the farts? They had to let the farts out. Aren't Dutch people extremely famous for farts?
They're famous for their Dutch ovens. But yes, it was to keep children inside the house, animals outside the house, and the wind coming through the top.
Okay, very good.
So in the picture that they show you, sorry, you've got a whole lot of chickens and goats on the one side and screaming children on the other, and this gust of wind.
I'm sold on that idea alone. That's like I'm down for that. Mongezi says, "Good morning, you gender non-binary people who identify as helicopters." That's about right. All right. That door is the only stable thing in Ass's life, says Conquer. All right. Okay, everybody. Calm down. Let's start. I still have a voice that makes me sound like I'm one of those old radio guys. Hi.
Whoa. What happened? I mean, you seemed fine on Friday.
Yeah. So I don't know if it was COVID or if I just had flu, but over the last, 2 weeks, the throat has not got better. Everything else is fine now. I mean, I felt sick.
It's probably the vid.
But I didn't miss any shows, which just, again, like I don't want anyone to say that we ever were like particularly, oh my God, it's COVID. We've got to take the whole year off and just I've got it hard and I can't talk to anyone. And
No, it's not like that anymore.
You don't think so?
And the cases are up tremendously.
Really?
In the last month, but mainly in the last week.
Has anybody been watching the cases still? Because we sort of
Yeah.
gave up on that. I think we turn to deaths.
Yeah, not so much anymore, the deaths, because over the last week, out of the thousands that have, there's been this kind of little spike again that have appeared. There've only been 100 deaths. So the deaths are far less than they used to be since the virus has mutated.
Right.
But also it's the effects are less, a lot, especially if you've been vaccinated, and it just kind of feels like a head cold.
Right.
And people are just getting on with it,
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, I don't think that here's an interesting graph. I mean, they show the total cases, right, on a linear scale, which just gives you, almost looks like it's like a mountain. It looks like you're climbing up a mountain. And there are a lot of cases, but as you say, there are not a lot of deaths at the moment. So it's an interesting thing to look at. And I mean, we often talk about this stuff. So why not just show a graph?
We don't see the graph. BT dubs.
No, I'm putting it up now. There. Don't panic. Jesus. Right, there it is. So that's it. So it basically goes flat up, flat up, flat up, flat up, flat up.
It looks like a snake.
Yeah. So, I mean, is this worth worrying about?
No. There are bigger things to worry about right now. Like more floods predicted for KZN.
Oh, no, really?
No.
Is that for real?
Yeah.
Shit.
Not good.
We do not need that. Oh, God. All right. Well, there was apparently some freak wave that happened in Kalk Bay in the Cape. Like, you can't really call it a tsunami, but a big wave came and like dumped all over people who were sitting on the beach.
Yeah. So we all know the Brass Bell in Kalk Bay. A lot of us have been to the Brass Bell, right?
You told me about that place.
Yeah.
Like this famous restaurant, right?
Yeah, and it's right on the beach, and it's got a tidal pool. And obviously sitting inside the restaurant, you've got quite a view of quite a large part of the area.
Mm-hmm.
And a waiter inside the Brass Bell actually saw this all happen and come to fruition. And it was a strong rip current that caused this wave that came out onto the sea and pulled a whole lot of people into the sea.
Yeah.
And the really amazing part of the story is that this barman, who was literally serving drinks at the restaurant and the pub, he's been a barman there for the past 8 years. He saw this huge wave coming in and covering people and just dragging them into the ocean. Jesus. So he quickly ran down all the stairs to get to the area. His name is Tongai Matandirocha.
Jeez. Okay. Guessing he's Zimbabwean.
Yeah. So he grabbed, I don't know, he should be a flipping hero. He used his belt to actually pull people out of the water and managed to get a whole lot of people out. And then he had to actually dive in when he saw that a child was amongst these people in the water.
Wow.
So he quickly undressed. I mean, how fast is he thinking right now?
What a dude. I mean, you're right. This guy should have a medal or something.
Yeah. He undressed, he dove into the water, and he said the rip, you could feel this rip current was really, really strong. It was still going on. And obviously the water is freezing, given the time of year, especially, but also where it is. He got a whole lot of people back to shore. Then he had to focus on this child, and he pulled the child out, this 8-year-old child. So her and her mom were the two that he is most famously now known for rescuing. And because the media captured a photograph of the two, the mom and daughter embracing him in thanks, And apparently he says he can't believe what happened. It was this like calm, sunny day. And then suddenly after lunchtime, this rip current started.
Unbelievable.
He also, in between all of this, managed to call for backup because there were more people still in the ocean. And then only after everyone was safe, he realized, after the adrenaline kind of subsided, that he'd actually hurt himself badly against the harbor's wall.
What a guy. I mean, would you put yourself at risk? This is the thing that I always ask myself. I'm like, you hear about these heroic people and they don't think about themselves and the danger. I mean, like, he might not have been a great swimmer. He might have drowned himself, blah, blah, blah. I mean, here's the dude, right? There's Tongai. He works at the Brass Bell as a waiter, as a barman. And you think, well, I don't know if I'd get involved. I mean, shame. These people are going to be pulled out to sea. But it's not my problem and I don't know them. So am I getting involved? And he doesn't even think that.
It's kind of like, but also the shock sets in, right? Were you looking through the window, you're kind of just going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
Right.
You don't do anything.
And there's a baby involved and no. It's horrible. Good for him. I love that.
What a hero.
we have all these national orders that the president's meant to hand out. Now, instead of doing this ceremony once every 6 months where he invites a whole bunch of old ANC cadres that everyone's forgotten about to the union buildings and says, here's for you and this one's for you, and hands them out like they fucking, food packs for the, by the way, this guy was, he, during the apartheid era, he hid someone in his garage while the old apartheid regime was looking for them. He has an order of Mapungubwe or the order of O.R. Tambo or whatever. This guy, now he should invite this guy straight to the union buildings now on his own dime, on the president's dime, saying, come here, we want to give you an award. First of all, he deserves it. That's undoubtedly the question, or the situation. Second thing, it would do a lot to stem a lot of this shitty xenophobia that we see people dealing with on a daily basis.
What an example to set.
Yeah, and they'd go, well, okay, you know what? We need people like this in our country. Someone who's brave enough to jump in the water, rescue a mom and kid and everybody else. Give him the award now. What are you doing, Prez? Why is he sitting around waiting for in a couple of months' time? He's going, who do we give these stupid orders to? And by the way, nobody even knows what the orders are. There's the order of the Baobab, and there's the order of O.R. Tambo, order of Mapungubwe. No one knows which one's the most important one. Or some of them are in gold and some of them are in silver. We don't know. We don't know what our national orders are. And they've been around since Thabo Mbeki's time. Anyway. So never mind a bells or a medal. He deserves a financial reward. Yeah, that's probably also a good idea.
Oh, yeah.
Give him some money.
Well, he sounds like the type of guy who would say, no, it's fine, keep it, or he'd give it to someone who needs it.
Right. Yeah. But what are we doing? Like, this is a perfect example of a hero. And you break the system for a hero. You create an occasion, a special thing. You have, I mean, the president lives in Cape Town half the year. He could have this guy come to his residence in Cape Town next week. Pull in, here's an order. Anyway. Yeah. Apparently, according to Gary, Batabi Dlamini is the only recipient of the Order of Zamalek. I didn't know that. That's very impressive. And Conga Chris rightly pointing out, I mean, the bravest thing about the story is that he jumped in the water because the ocean is so cold in Cape Town. That's another thing. Whew.
Yeah, it gives you complete body freeze immediately.
Yeah, for sure.
It actually hurts. Like it makes your veins. Oof. If you even just put your feet in.
Oof.
Your veins get so cold, it feels like they can snap.
Oh, it's so horrible. Oh, the Cape water. Ugh, I just get cold thinking about it. Anyway, so a brand new week, and it's a short week again because we've got a public holiday on Wednesday. So it's one of those weeks that's split in half. We've got basically 2 days now, and Thursday and Friday. I don't think anybody in this country is dumb enough to have been trapped at work on Thursday and Friday, right? Are there going to be people who go?
But I still think there are people who have been so desperate to get to a different part of the country other than where they live for so long, but they're still on holiday after the Easter weekend.
Yeah, I mean,
Because those
if you
extra 2
take,
days give you a whole lot more.
well, yeah, even if you forget all the other holidays that we've had up to now and the ones that are still coming, but if you just took Thursday and Friday off, then
Mm.
you'd be able to go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and you'd only be back at work on Tuesday. So you essentially get 6 days for the price of 2 if
Mm.
you're smart. I mean, that is a good deal. Plus, I've said it a million times, these middle of the week holidays are such a waste. I mean, what are you going to do? You can't go away for a day, right? So you basically, you're just not going to go to work. If you are somehow meant to be at work on Thursday and Friday, we'll be here Thursday and Friday. Um, then what's the point really of the Wednesday public holiday? It doesn't make any sense. It's this dumb for people who have to pay for stuff. Like I'm always on the employer side because they're the ones who
Mm.
they're the ones who, if they don't open the businesses, no one gets the work, right? Um, these guys have to open up their business on Thursday and Friday. They have to pay staff for Thursday and Friday, even though a lot of people won't be working. So what's the point? It's dumb. It's really, really
Yeah.
dumb. Of course, it is our most important holiday. It's Freedom Day. So it's not like they're going to just, oh, well, this year, let's just move it to the Friday. It's not a big deal. But they really should. They really should do that. Anyway, and then we've got another short week next week because of the Monday overflow on the the public holiday front. So that's meant to be the Sunday, but we get the Monday off too. So for a lot of people, it's bonus time. And then there's nothing for a long while.
We're quite lucky with this Sunday public holiday turns into a Monday thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's some countries that don't do that.
They don't give it to you,
Mozambique
yeah.
doesn't.
Well, Mozambique, really, they don't have any. Every day is a holiday in Mozambique, isn't it?
Yeah,
Am I
because
being unfair?
everyone's on the beach just lying around.
No. There is a June 16th coming up. That's on a Thursday as well. So again, like why bother with that Friday, right? Anyway.
Mm.
So a couple of things to get to from the weekend. What did I do on Saturday? Let me think about this quickly. I know I did something on Saturday. Just can't remember what it was. You ever had that happen?
Oh,
You've got
definitely.
I went for a lovely, lovely dinner with some friends in Joburg. They live in the most beautiful house in an old neighborhood in Johannesburg with this enormous garden. It's you think Joburg and you think, please, Joburg is like, and this is how a lot of people who are not from Joburg think about it, especially. They're like, Joburg's not that pretty. It's mostly these high walls, and people may have a nice garden behind those high walls, but it's never really beautiful on a scale that's like Cape Town. We can't compete with Cape Town. This is one of those old, magnificent, beautiful houses that looks like it should be on the cover of a magazine. And and it's got, like, right at the bottom of the garden is a pool, but you have to walk. It would be the equivalent of me walking around my house like 20 times to get to the pool. And it's right at the bottom there. And it's just these trees that were all lit up. I mean, I arrived there at night, so I didn't really get to see, how expansive it is. But all of the trees were lit by these floodlights from below. I just thought I was in a movie.
That's amazing.
It's so pretty. I mean, when you see something like that, and I haven't been to these friends' house before, but there were a whole bunch of us there, and it was they eventually. I mean, it became a bit of a party, and I didn't want to spend the night, so I decided then I was going to head home. And I left there at about 12:30, maybe 1:45, and hopped in the car and drove home. There were so many police on the road, so thank God I hadn't been drinking. But I saw them pulling over people left, right, and center, and I thought, because they were doing breathalyzers and things, and I think they saw that I was I was fine. Anyway, the guy's like, no, you must go, because there were so many people already being pulled over for drunk driving. People still do that. And I say this as someone who, listen, I used to do it, hey? I mean, I'll admit it.
Yeah, years back, that's what we did.
That's all you could do. I mean, I knew when I went to this thing, I was like, well, if I'm going to drink, I must Uber. And it's expensive, but it's worth it. Because if you have to pay a fine or pay a bribe or whatever, you can pay a lot more. So just get the goddamned Uber, right? And in previous lifetimes, 10, 15 years ago, I would have probably driven drunk and taken a chance.
Yeah.
But I was like, no.
Just
I'm gonna
back
do that now.
to these beautiful properties in Johannesburg. We really do forget, and I think a lot of the time, just having lived in Cape Town, for instance, versus Joburg, when you're driving around Cape Town and surrounds, you're very much exposed to the view all the time. And wherever you are, you're exposed to view. There's always the view of the sea, the view of the mountain, the view of the farms. In Joburg, we often forget driving around even our suburbs, where we might see a bit of a hill in the distance that's covered in trees and some properties. Sure. But where being relatively flat and not having these enormous mountain ranges, we forget what's really around us in terms of these really beautiful old properties. But beyond that, within the city itself, there's so much history that we forget about. And, there are these walking tours that you can do in Joburg. And I'm thinking in particular of a coffee table book called Hidden Johannesburg, Hidden Joburg. And just how much history is in our buildings and how many places you have to kind of go underground to see in these basements and old railway stations, and things that we don't see all the time, that aren't just that these landmarks that we drive past. They're kind of hidden.
I know what you mean, because this house was it's in Sandhurst, and you could actually, through a gap in the trees, you could see that Leonardo building, which is the tallest building in Africa now, and you could see about the top third of it through these trees. But if you didn't see that, you'd think you were in the middle of the countryside. You'd think I'm not in the middle of a city. And you know what Joburg's like. It is huge and sprawling. But to see that just kind of positions you. And I'll tell you what, there are just as many beautiful houses in Pretoria. I mentioned that I went to...
Oh, yeah.
I went to that... you talk about awards. I went when Caroline Steyn got an award from the president of France, and the French ambassador gave it to her. And it was at his residence in Pretoria, which is kind of up on the hill, the same side as the Union Buildings, looking to the south. And again, this beautiful garden and big trees, and it's just such a magic place to. You see all these, South Africans, and some of them were prominent people who I would have recognized, kind of walking around this garden, and you think, wow, this is a smart thing. And there are some smart places. There's some absolutely magnificent houses. And you think, well, these places are not, no matter how the rest of us are dealing with, the price of petrol and all the rest of it, these houses, some of them are owned by a foreign country's embassy. Some of them are owned by these rich families who've been there for years, tens, hundreds of years, maybe even. And there are really pockets of South Africa where it's serious. There's serious money. I mean, I mentioned also that Uber driver who took me to an event that I went to 3 weeks ago. And he was saying, as we drove past these houses, oh, yeah, that house belongs to this politician. And, that's where that one lives. And that's where that one lives. And they know everything, these Uber drivers. They should be our tour guides. We should find some way that,
well, we don't know how much of this they're making up. Because they're not tour guides, they don't have to be held accountable to any truths.
That's true, but I think I would have gathered if they were talking complete shit.
Yeah.
And they were like pointing at these very, very big, very glamorous looking properties. These gates that they look like something that you'd see in a period piece from 1800 or something. So one of those Jane Austen novels, and you think, wow, I wonder what kind of house lives behind that. And I love this stuff, because to me, I mean, I've always spent my life kind of with this love of architecture, which I still have. I mean, I'd never become an architect, because if you are, and many of our listeners are architects, but if you're an architect, you sometimes don't get to design the thing you want to design. You have to work with someone else's budget, and with commercial projects that are sometimes really boring. I mean, imagine being an artist and you get commissioned to do or an architect rather, and you get commissioned to do a parking lot or a public toilet or something, because you might have to do that. That's not fun. But then you see some of these houses. Oh, imagine being given a budget that's just out of this world, and someone says to you, just design the most beautiful house you can think of, and I want this, but they give you a couple of things, but they say to you, otherwise, just make it as beautiful as possible. That,
Yeah.
to me, that would be the only commission I'd be interested in as an architect. When you actually see these houses and you get to kind of walk through them and you see the gardens that they're laid out in, and it gives you an idea of how the optimal human living existence may actually look. This is how it would be if you had endless
Utopia.
amounts of money, if you had people to clean the house. You didn't think about all these practical things that the rest of us ordinary folks think about. If you just had piles and piles of money and you could employ, 3 maids and 2 people to do the gardens and that kind of thing. This is how you'd live if you had endless money.
What are you doing with your days though
Oh,
because
you kidding?
we all have to distract ourselves until we die somehow.
No, but I mean, you never get bored. And in an environment, I've always said, if you work and live in an environment that gives you great happiness, your work is just generally better. There's a reason that, great people in history have always wanted to extend what's going on in their mind to their actual surroundings. Like if you have a pretty garden and in summer you can go and work in your garden, you could sit there with your laptop, under an umbrella, or you can make a little study. I mean, this is what there's this famous picture of like Queen Victoria, who was not the fittest person in the world, right? She didn't like exercise. She didn't believe it was good to be in the outdoors because you'd catch a chill and all of this stuff. But they used to set up a tent in her gardens, and then she'd go and work from her tent. It wasn't a tent like you and I would put up like one of those.
It wasn't a wigwam.
No, and it wasn't one of those things you'd buy from like Cape Union Mart. It was this huge, big, like a campaign tent that the kings of old used to set up on the battlefield with these magnificent curtains all the way around and Persian carpets on the floors.
Yeah.
But there's something about that. If you could work in that kind of environment, it just felt like the work you were doing was so much more important. And I just think often that life would be so much better for all of us if everybody had just a little bit more beauty around them. And if you had more money to pay to keep that beauty up or to improve it permanently. If you live in a kind of one room, which so many South Africans do, and you're squeezed in there with everybody else and you just don't have any space for yourself and all of that stuff, it's very hard for you to think creatively. It's very hard for you to consider like all the endless possibilities and what could be achieved, because you're surrounded by so much survival and basic necessity. I just think there's something about these places that just turns me on.
Absolutely. When you're not worried about paying bills and banking and have I bought food for the pet and
right,
are the kids what extramurals are next.
and again, just as an aside, I'm not saying that I'm jealous of those people who do live in these magnificent places, because I wouldn't want to be anyone else. And I'm sure they have their problems too, right? I'm sure they have things that they wake up and in the morning and they're like, oh God, I've got to sort this out because otherwise I'm going to be in big shit. And we always think, well, whatever we're dealing with, whether it's our bond, our bills, our businesses, our jobs, our deadlines, the cost of fuel, having to do the shopping, worrying about putting our kids through school. Those are the things that all of us are worried about. But everybody has their worries at different levels of society. They all have a million things that maybe you don't consider the most important right now, but if you were in their position, you'd also think, oh, wow, I've got to do that. That's such a pain in the ass. Got to come up with a solution for this. It'd be amazing.
And even if everything was thought of for you, you would become existential and you'd become probably a philosopher and question everything in life.
Yeah, right.
Because your mind's not distracted enough.
Right. Anyway, so enough about that. Robin says I wouldn't venture further than Sandton if I lived in Joburg. Well, Robin, you don't live in Joburg, so where are you, in East London or something? Where's Robin?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, let us know, because in East London, apparently there's some beautiful places in East London. Again, if you go to the nicest neighborhood in every city, then you get a feel for what it must be like to live there with lots of money. So you got to look at that, and then you got to look at the worst, because somewhere in between is where most of us will be. Between the best and the worst, obviously. And if you can find yourself an environment that makes you happy, that gives you joy, that creates a bit of space for you, and very few people have that ability. If you can get that right, go for it. It's amazing. All right. Anyway, we've got other things to talk about this morning, and a couple of these are headlines. Leigh-Ann's got a story in a moment or two about South Africa's first burger patty that's been made in a lab. Ugh. I don't know if I'm excited about that. But before we get to that, here are some other headlines. Apparently, and I don't know if this is a story to be taken seriously. I never know with Die Antwoord if anything is to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
But the adopted son of the controversial rap rave group Die Antwoord has made sensational claims of child abuse against his foster parents, including exposure to pornography, violence, and rituals. Now 20 years old, destitute, and back in the poor Vrededorp neighborhood in Johannesburg, where Waddy Jones, who's known as Ninja, and Henri du Toit, who's known as Yolandi Visser, picked me up from school in 2010 at the age of 9, Gabriel Tokkie du Preez has spilled the beans about his sordid childhood with the international music stars. So I'm going to show you a picture of this person. The Antwoord obviously is a bit of a, it's theatrical. It's not necessarily true. We know that the two people who actually started the Antwoord are not even poor whites by any kind of estimation. And a lot of it was a show. But I didn't know they had an adopted son as the Antwoord. They pushed the story this far.
We do remember, Gareth. Remember they adopted him from Fitas.
Oh, God.
Does that ring a bell?
Fitas is that terrible neighborhood in Joburg, right? You talk about great neighborhoods, and now Fitas is the opposite of that. Anyway, so here's what this guy says. Okay. Jones and du Toit took du Preez and his minor sister to a private clinic to have their blood drawn, supposedly to be used in rituals. Du Preez saw Jones carrying small bottles of blood. Jones showed du Preez a pornographic video clip sent to him by a former girlfriend on his cell phone when he was 11 years old and in his custody. Du Preez stabbed his older brother with a knife in the Antwoord's Parkhurst, Johannesburg home. Jones and du Toit congratulated him and emulated the scene using children in a 2019 music video. Now, he's admitting there that he stabbed his brother, but somehow this is the Antwoord's fault. He also encouraged du Preez's minor sister, who until recently still visited their Cape Town mansion, to undress before them and join them naked in the sauna with other naked adults. The girl now refuses to see her foster parents. This is very twisted. What do we believe? What do you know about this? I mean, do you know more about this than me? Here's the guy, by the way. This is what he looks like now.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm sorry.
That house I was talking about, that's like the opposite of that house. And here's what he looked like when he was in the Antwoord's music video. This is just very disturbing. I hate seeing people.
Firstly, if you look at that photograph, though, it looks a bit staged somehow.
You think so?
Yeah. It looks like something the Antwoord might put together. It's just weird with that upside down baby grow that kind of looks like ghostish.
You see, I don't know how much to believe about this, because the Antwoord it's like a manufactured thing. It's all bullshit. So is this part of...
I mean, it's amazingly done.
Is this some really twisted publicity stunt? That's what I don't understand.
Just never know. And the other thing is the story that I read, and at least another 4 stories all came from the same news agency, and was written in the exact same format. So it kind of feels like it might have been an exclusive, and in that case, you don't really know. I mean, even if it is true, is he making up these stories so that he can gain pity and money? There are so many different angles to this.
I'm going to send you a link, maybe listed on cliffcentral.com. I mean, there's some very, very weird things going on in the world. And one of them is this, I suppose you could call it a documentary that they did in America about this very inbred family called the Whitakers. I've told you before, something that really disturbs me is like these people who live out in the hills, and they're very inbred and they're very weird. I was watching this over the weekend. Again, like part of it is this weird voyeurism, and the Unfort is appealing to the same thing with this weird, their music videos are always crazy. But this is the Whitaker family, right? They're supposedly America's most inbred family.
Yeah. So the guy on the far right, he can't communicate at all with words. He basically barks.
His name is Ray, and he goes, hey, 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 hey. That's all he does the whole time, right?
I mean, he's not stupid. He can, using body actions, he can explain things, but he is walking around with feces in his pants permanently.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where, the world of the Antwoord, which is mostly made up, and the real world of people like this, like these Whitakers, where those two worlds collide is where I'm most afraid. That's not stuff I like. I have to see it. I'm almost like drawn to it by sheer fascination, but it is something else to meet actual people like that. And we do have neighborhoods in South Africa where there are these terribly, terribly inbred, really weird and kind of backward remnants of, like these 1800, what do they call them? Those families that lived, what were they called?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. This has happened through history.
The poor Afrikaners, they used to call them, damn it, man, the word escapes me now, but they used to like live in the back garden of other people's
Uitlanders?
No, not Uitlanders. It's like something, if anybody knows the word, oh my God, it's just, that was some scary stuff. If you know what the word is, like buitewoners or voor, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, they used to, and this was a serious problem. And before the 1948 election, where the Nationalist Party won, these poor whites were a major, major thing in South Africa. And then the National Party government came along, and they did their best to like promote these people, and to give them jobs and to raise their level of education and to stop them from fucking themselves in the family, And this was a thing that they were trying to do. And then I think about the Antwoord and how they've made it into almost entertainment. And it's kind of freaky. It really is freaky. I think you freaky, and I like you a lot.
I like it a lot.
Anyway, so that's one of the stories. Got us on a whole tangent about these people. 94 million rand Powerball Plus winner has claimed their prize, but wants to remain anonymous, which is very smart.
Very smart. Yeah.
We've discussed this before. If anybody who listens to this show ever wins the lotto, do not tell anybody. This is good advice for all of us, right?
Yeah. So
the person who won lives in Limpopo. They won from the April 8th draw. The ticket was via Quick Pick selection, and they only paid 45 rand for the ticket. They've won 94.4 million rand. That's huge money. 94 million rand.
Yeah.
Just 100 million rand. That's really good. Anyway, apparently, it is an exciting weekend for the National Lottery games coming up. The estimated jackpots for all three games are currently peaking at significant levels. It's a chance to become an overnight multimillionaire. Your dreams come true. According to Tuba, winners who receive anything more than 50,000 rand and over will receive trauma counseling, followed by extensive financial advice to assist them with financial planning at no cost. So did you know that?
It's very
Even
important.
If you win 50 grand, they'll help you. They'll give you some free advice.
Yeah. It should almost be compulsory that it's anonymous for, let's say, 3 months, until the person has kind of settled with the shock, and had some counseling and decided what they want to do. And again, with the anonymity, if you do decide to tell your family, you will end up always being seen as the bad person when there are family members in trouble financially who need help. If you don't help them,
just don't tell them. Don't tell anybody that you won. And if you want to anonymously just help people quietly and put some money in their account, there are ways to do that, but you don't have to tell them that you're the person who won the lotto. You're just asking for trouble. And especially in a country like South Africa, where there's so many people who are desperate for 100 rand here, 200 rand there. This could make the difference for them. Anyway, bijwoners. That was the word I was looking for. Alice, you're quite right. Bijwoners. Those are the people who lived in the back garden of other people, and they were these really, really poor, and not just financially poor, but poor in terms of genetic stock too. Wild people. Unbelievable. One last quick story before we get to Dr. Hanan. I still can't believe this. I heard about it over the weekend in the news, and I was dumbstruck. I had to rewind and listen to it again. Apparently, an on-duty eThekwini municipality official was shot dead at a water tanker filling point. The mayor said at this stage the motive for the killing is unknown. We're in the grip of a disaster, and this murder is something we don't need. We condemn it and hope the police will move with speed to arrest those responsible. The employee was entrusted with the critical responsibility of controlling water tankers that were being filled and then sent into neighborhoods to distribute water. Because as you know, in so many parts of KZN since the floods, people don't have running water, right?
It's that ironic thing. It's flooding, but you don't have drinking water, yeah.
Correct. And now, apparently, scarily, this person was working for the municipality, and they were in charge of distributing these water tankers to various areas so that people could get fresh drinking water. And this municipal official was shot. So
immediately my mind goes to that, tensions are high. People are desperate.
Yeah.
When you're in a queuing situation and you're desperate for something as simple as water for your family and you, anything can go down.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a scary story that this person went to work as a municipal worker, and then, in the course of their normal work, they got shot for trying to distribute water. I mean, there's always more to these stories, and I'm sure that they'll be doing all the necessary investigations, but it's just an ugly story and not the kind of thing that we need, as the mayor of Durban says, during a time like this, where so many people are desperate and reliant on things like water in tankers that comes around. You literally go with a bucket to fill it up so that you and your family can have drinking water, not even water for cooking or washing or any of that stuff. This is just drinking water. Scary. So there are lots of other things in the news. We'll get to a few of those later on. But right now it is time to welcome Dr. Hanan Bushkin. And on a Monday morning, this is usually what we do, is we get to speak to Dr. Hanan in our little segment called It's Gonna Be Okay. Dr. Hanan Bushkin is, of course, a renowned psychologist, head of the Anxiety and Trauma Clinic in Johannesburg, and he joins us this morning from his study at home. Hey, Doc, how are you?
I wish this was my study at home. I'm already at the...
Where are you?
I'm actually at the clinic. I'm actually in another office. We just don't have any electricity, and my room is pitch dark. You wouldn't be able to see me.
I thought I thought there was a painting by you on the back wall there. It's not some raw thing, is it? What is that?
It's actually the child therapist room that I'm using.
Okay.
I was about to give you credit for some really abstract art, but it's in one of the kids' rooms. Do psychologists still use those Rorschach kind of butterfly things to get people to say what they see in a picture?
They do the Rorschach test, the ink block test.
Yes.
So it has become much more standardized, but we hardly use it. Some old traditional psychotherapists, psychodynamic therapists use it, and psychiatrists use it to create some talking points and to get some insight. But we don't use it. We don't find it effective.
What is it meant to, in terms of classic kind of psychology, what is it meant to tell you when people describe what they see in one of those blot tests? Or we used to make them at school. You put stuff on the one side and you close it, and then it makes like a butterfly.
Right. No, it's quite rich in information. Can tell you relationship, as specific as relationship between parents, between you and parents,
Really?
childhood difficulties, traumas, rejection, sexual abuse. So it can reveal, it's great talking points, because I can show you a picture of anything and ask you, what do you see? And whatever you project on the paper, it's a great starting point to say, why do you see that, and where did it come from, and how come your perception is this way and that way?
I sometimes show Leigh-Ann pictures like that just so that she can give us some wild interpretation. All right.
We should actually do that.
We should.
Yeah.
I think it'd be interesting. I mean, we've done all other kinds of things. We had numerologists and astrologers on. We may as well have an actual test that they used to do on people. So listen, we're waiting for Lebang because she's got a story to tell us. But I think this is an interesting story. And if Lebang can't join us for whatever reason, she may also have load shedding. Who knows? But she wanted to ask you about this. Essentially, it's something a lot of people in South Africa are dealing with. A previously absent father of, one of her kids who wanted to come back into the child's life earlier this year, but is already letting them down again. And she wants to protect her son from this pain. And I think there are a lot of mothers, and sometimes even a few fathers, who are trying to keep that absent parent away because the kid is bound to have expectations when they come back into their lives. And if the permanently present parent, or even the parent who's around the most or is the most responsible, can tell that there's this absent parent that's going to come back in and then ultimately let the kid down again, they want to protect them against that. Because that inconsistency is probably worse for a kid than anything else. Do you want to give us some basic overview of how to deal with this, and also what the impact on children is when a parent comes into their life and then goes, and then comes in and goes, and what that does to a kid to create any idea of how, normal human relations are meant to work?
Right. So putting aside the legal requirements and the legal issues of parental rights and parental involvement and what they can and can't do, on a psychological level, children need consistency and stability. Take away consistency and stability from a child, the child begins to psychologically spin. So the analogy that I've used before, imagine you're at the back of a plane and the captain comes on, and the captain, or maybe the captain and the co-captain, are busy fighting. We are going to be okay. We're not going to be okay. Hold on, we're going to turn left. Hold on, we're going to turn right. How do you think you're going to feel at the back of the plane? Or you're going to live with anxiety, panic. You're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel completely out of control. Versus having both captains agree and say everything is going to be okay. We might be going through turbulence, but everything is sorted. You don't have to worry. You're going to sit at the back of the plane and feel much more in control. Whereas parents, we are the captains we are the pilots of our children's flight. And if one second the captain is in, the other second they're out, they say they're going to do X, they do Y, we're going to be sitting, or children are going to be sitting at the back of the plane feeling completely out of control. As a matter of fact, it is so bad.
I love this example because if you can imagine as an adult being on a plane and hearing halfway through your flight that your captain has changed, that's not going to make you feel very comfortable or very secure. All of us are going to go, oh my God, what happened to the other captain? Right?
Right. Exactly.
Example. It's a great metaphor.
It is a great metaphor, and especially as adults, we can kind of reason it, and we can come up with perhaps logical answers of why the captain has changed. Can you imagine children that are not able to do so? Where's dad? Why is he not here? He promised he'd be here for my birthday. And by the way, the same goes for mom. It might work the other way around. Where's mom? She promised she'd come and fetch me. Why is she not here? Now, by the way, we give parents, of course, leeway to make mistakes. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. You can be late to your child this. You can sometimes have work commitments that doesn't allow you to do X, Y, and Z that you promised. That's okay. But it must be the anomaly, the exception, not the rule. If the rule is inconsistent, if your standard is being inconsistent, you promised you'd be there, but you're not, what's going to happen to your children, believe it or not, and this is a really important point, your kids will adapt.
Right.
Now, hear me out. Your kids will adapt, but what are they adapting to? They're adapting to chaos. And you know what children go and do once they have a familiar environment? They go and copy paste. They take what they know and they go out and create the same thing with new relationships. So if a child becomes familiar with chaos, they go out of the way when they're old enough and they go and create exactly that. They seek relationships that are turbulent. They seek relationships that are abusive. They seek relationships that are inconsistent and unstable because that is what they know. People don't repeat or don't create what they want. People repeat what they know. People don't create what they want. We think consciously we want X, we want Y, but all we do, we go out of our way to recreate exactly what is familiar to us. So the typical example of like the abused woman that keeps on picking an abusive guy. And they'll all be lined up in my office saying, I want somebody kind, somebody consistent, somebody stable, somebody nice, somebody that comes from a good family, somebody that says X and does X. But they will all go out and create and repeat the same pattern. They'll be in a social gathering, 100 men, 99 of those men will treat them like absolute princess. The one guy that will absolutely abuse and control, and that's who she picks. And she doesn't pick him for any other reason except that's familiar. And you ask her, why did you pick him? And she'll say, she won't even understand on a psychological level why it happened. She'll say, he's so good looking, he's so funny, he's so charming, he's so confident. But on a deep psychological level, the reason why she picked him is because he is familiar. And then people ask me, but Hanan, how does she even know that that's the abusive guy? Because there's something very subtle. The way he holds his glass reminds her on a subconscious level the way her dad did, or the way that he dances on the dance floor, the way he walks, or in very small little fine details. It's just there's something very familiar. And remember, the subconscious mind is not geared towards your happiness. It's geared towards survival. And that's why you will always create not what will make you happy, but what will ensure your survival, which is familiarity.
It's also easier, isn't it? The path where you have to do, your brain has to do the less work, and it's not as challenging. You don't have to challenge yourself. It's the easier path. Definitely.
You're conserving so much energy just going back to what is autopilot. And that's what we're doing, by the way, to our kids. That's the biggest cost of having an absent or inconsistent parenting. Your children will adapt and they will go out and create exactly the same thing in their lives because that is what becomes familiar.
So then to go back to the example that started this conversation, better to keep those inconsistent people out of a child's life because the child requires and craves consistency, or they're going to end up going for somebody in their adult life, being in a relationship that reminds them of that instability and that copy and paste stuff you were telling us about from their own childhood. Is this also why they come up with that really terrible and irritating saying where, they refer specifically to women in the case of this example, and they're like, oh, she loves bad guys. She's always after the bad guys. She seems to have a liking for these rebellious dudes who are exactly the opposite of what she explains she wants. She falls in love with the guy from the biker gang, or the dude who's involved in illicit drug dealing, or the guy who keeps breaking the rules, or just the dude who's inconsistent and somehow doesn't deliver on responsibilities. Is that where that comes from?
So it could be, I think, on a historical level, women like bad guys because very protective, but only in the short term. In the long term, we want somebody that's stable and consistent and predictable. So in the short term, it's very appealing, but in the long term, women, especially women, they go for something very, very different. I'll share a story with you, and I think this would be also a great example of how we actually can shift that. I had a patient, 29 years old. He grew up in a very destructive household. His father actually left him when he was very young. His mother never hugged him, never kissed him, never held him. There was never any consistency and healthy touch whilst he was growing up. He's 29 years old, he's gay. Every relationship that he gets into is with destructive men that cheat on him, men that steal from him, men that do drugs, men that abuse him physically as well. And he came to me because he wanted to break the cycle. And I said to him, tell me, when a nice guy, or let's say the horrible guy comes and wants to be with you, the horrible guy, the inconsistent guy, what does that feel like? He goes, fireworks, something to fix, something to change. And I said to him, when a nice guy comes up to you and wants to engage with you, what does that feel like? Guess what he says?
Boring.
No attraction, no excitement.
Exactly. But actually on a subconscious level, what's happening, he's interpreting it as boring, but what is happening on a very subconscious level, the one guy is familiar and the other guy and the energy is unfamiliar. And guess what I made him do? Well, the method to treat it is expose him to a new environment. So I made him date the boring, consistent, stable guy. And initially he wanted to not only kill him, but kill me as well, because it was so boring. He hated every second of it. But we made him do it, and he hated it. We made him do it, and he hated it. And we made him do it. And probably about 13 weeks later, 13 weeks, almost 3 months later, he says to me, sits in my office and says, Hanan, I'm learning to appreciate it. I said, what do you mean? He says, it's so weird. When the guy says he'll be home at 7, he's home at 7. When he said he'll do X, he does X. We changed his familiar. Now they've been together for about 3.5 years because we changed his familiar. So just because you grew up with it, it doesn't mean that you have to live with it. You can shape your perception, your reality by creating different experiences today.
Wow. I'm kind of pleased that we didn't go too much into the particular example in hand, because what you've just described is probably something that so many South Africans, especially because we've got so many people who were raised in inconsistent ways in South Africa. We've got so many absent parents. We've got so many parents who just did not give that familiarity that a kid needs to a stable situation. And I reckon there are plenty of us this morning who are listening to this going, hold on a second, that makes sense. I hear myself in what Dr. Hanan's saying about this inconsistency, about this pattern of like not necessarily good for you, pathological even, and certainly inconsistent stuff. And that's why I'm looking for that the whole time, because that's what I know. Not the right way to, that's not the way to improve your life, right?
Definitely. And by the way, you don't just seek for it in a romantic partner, you seek then for it in friendships, in relation with colleagues, in relation with a boss. So it permeates every relationship, not just a romantic partnership. It permeates into every relationship.
And that is also so complicated, because we're certainly not victim blaming, which is something that, gets thrown around as a term a lot. But if you are someone who's constantly choosing these really awful people in your life, there's a part of you that has to take responsibility for that and change your ways. Otherwise, you're going to keep on finding yourself in this situation. And of course, these bad people have as much, if not more, responsibility to bear. But if you're allowed to keep on happening, that's on you.
Absolutely, because you have the power. You don't have the power to control anybody else. You have the power to set boundaries and put yourself in environments and situations that are much healthier for you. It's not easy, but as an example that I've given you, it's possible to shift your perspective and to shift your patterns.
Well, thank you, Doc. This is really, really interesting stuff. And I can imagine that I'm just judging by some of the comments that this is precisely what we needed to hear this Monday morning. Always good to see you. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you guys.
I just have to say that if you have any particular issue that you want to talk to Dr. Hanan about, if there's something that you'd like us to address on the show, this is your chance to get some free therapy, and you can be a part of the show. Just send us an email, contact@cliffcentral.com. We want to hear from you. Cheers, Doc. We'll see you next week.
Great to see you. Bye, guys.
Cheers. That's Dr. Hanan Bushkin. Always good. Did you also get a feeling that there was so much about that just resonates with many, many people that, I can think of people I know in my life who just really needed to hear that this morning.
100%.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, we'll be back in just a moment. This is Monday, cliffcentral.com. Don't go anywhere.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast. I think the world has realized that we're very reliant on one company, and it's TSMC.
And it's one semiconductor manufacturing company.
Exactly. And it manufactures most of the chips in the world.
Yeah, I think they have a monopoly. Well, not monopoly, but they definitely are the largest player. Upwards of 70% of all chips.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Do you suffer from collectivism?
I started collecting when I was about 8 years old.
Do you have an obsession with objects?
I sort of got into collecting TV cars.
Are you a fanatic? A devotee? Are you someone exhibiting enthusiasm or strong passion?
When lockdown hits, when everyone was kind of bored at home, they started Googling, like, what are these things worth these days?
Cliff Central dispenses a weekly dose of collectomania. Join me as I talk to compulsive collectors. Fascinating.
The frame's total value is probably about 12,000 Rand.
Possibly a little weird.
I developed this infatuation with the Statue of Liberty.
Collectomania, Mondays on the Gareth Cliff Show. Brought to you by SA Gold Coin Exchange and the Scoin Shop. That's right. Collectomania returns today in its usual home on a Monday. We did one last week on Tuesday because we missed out on the Monday. But today we're going to be joined by someone who we've actually worked with, or I've worked with at cliffcentral.com, a guy called Wayne Berger, who's a collector. And he's also a technology entrepreneur. He's got some really interesting things in his collection. And in fact, at one point, I think he even gave us a whole bunch of stuff to auction off on cliffcentral.com to raise money for charity. So we'll talk to Wayne a little bit later on. We want to hear from you. You can email us, contact@cliffcentral.com. You can drop a comment in the comment section, which is always busy. And if you've never been in the comment section before, good luck. Good luck. There's some nutcases in there. I love it. All right. So many people to talk to and so many places to go and things to think about this morning. Quentin is saying, just based on what Dr. Hanan said a moment ago, if you didn't hear it, he was talking about how, people, they I'm going to paraphrase him here, and I hope I don't get it wrong. I hate doing this when you try to summarize what you've heard someone say, and you're not entirely sure if your definition is the same as theirs. Basically, that you certain patterns imprint on you as a child, and
you seek familiarity.
If you seek that familiarity, even if you had let's say you had a really abusive or horrible childhood or inconsistent childhood that made you anxious and didn't necessarily give you a very stable sense of self, you will carry on through your adult life replicating that pattern with other people because you will seek that same familiarity, even though it was a bad familiarity. And Quentin says here, I thought this is a good point, the same is true for business. You hire one toxic person in management and they hire someone like them because they're comfortable around them. And then that grows and grows. I wonder how many businesses are just, twisted and awful because of that principle that people are living with.
There are huge businesses and even banks and huge construction companies, and then you get into the whole situation where tenders are given out to people that you're familiar with,
Well, yeah, literally familiar as in family. And then, like Zwelium Kiese and, the whole family that he was giving contracts to. Anyway.
That family.
You don't need to look too far to find examples of that in South Africa. Anyway, we want to hear from you. Let us know what you're up to this morning. We're going to get to Collectomania a little bit later on. I hear the birds chirping in your garden there, Leigh-Ann. That's nice and morning-like.
Everything's awakening. Especially, and yes, now that I've been outside, I see that there was a little bit of rain. But
you go outside for a ciggy?
I did. Yeah.
I've been thinking about about smoking because I've obviously never been a smoker, and
you've been thinking about starting up smoking?
No, because I've had this throat thing. I've always the whole of the last 2 weeks. I've been sounding like shit, and even this morning, I'm like. When I'm not talking on the show, I'm clearing my throat the whole time, and it's probably just the result of some flu, which is not going away in a hurry. Could even have been COVID. But what bothers me about this is I'm sounding exactly like my dad, who smoked his whole life. Right? When I go like that, I'm like, oh my god,
it's like the old man noises,
Right? And I thought, I wonder if there's any difference really between the way I'm sounding at the moment, the way he's sounding. He smoked his whole life. Like, I think we started when he was a teenager. And here I am. And like with 2 weeks of having whatever it is, some respiratory situation, I'm like the same as him. It's just so shitty. Talk about familiarity. Talk about, pattern recognition and the pattern repeating itself. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
God, I'm sounding like this. And then I think about it and I think, I would hate to wake up in the morning like you do. And I'm not, judging you, and I don't care if you smoke or not. But I'd hate to wake up in the morning and the first thing you want is to go with a ciggy in your mouth. I mean, you, my dad, there are lots of people I know and like in my life. But I just, the idea of having a cigarette first thing in the morning is so gross to me. Ugh.
I know. But even to some smokers it is. But it's a thing. It's a horrible, horrible addiction. And again, just to remind you, even more addictive than heroin. So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
It's not great.
Let me just ask you this: have you noticed how many people are vaping? Because I've noticed friends of mine, like one of my mates, he started vaping, but like he's got a new vape every time I see him, and he's really into it. I mean, like this is something he's doing now. It's as consistent as smoking. If he doesn't have his vape with him, he's just as bad as a cigarette smoker. These things have spread like wildfire. You can buy them at the garage now. My sister does it too occasionally, but she's been very like consistent, and she doesn't nearly do it as much. She used to be a smoker, but she doesn't do it nearly as much as she used to when she smoked cigarettes. And for her, I think it's a huge improvement. But with this other friend of mine, he's so into it, man, and he is smoking that vape all the time.
Yeah, I think the scary part is all the different flavors and colors and shapes and things that you get, which are kind of enticing to those who haven't even started yet, especially at a younger age.
Do you think they make it a little more acceptable?
Yes, absolutely.
It's almost like a snack. It's not really like a it doesn't get the same ugly treatment that cigarettes get. And I mean, cigarettes are banned pretty much everywhere now. But I know people who smoke, they vape in their cars, they vape in public transport, they vape at the office, they vape in the queue at like government departments. They vape everywhere. They don't seem to have a problem with that because you can get away with it in those places because it doesn't smell like cigarettes.
That's it. It's a lot of it's got to do with the odor and the secondhand smoke. Yeah.
Have we got any? I know this is not necessarily a question you can answer, but if anyone who's listening to us in the audience has any details in this, maybe if you're a doctor, we've got doctors who listen to us. Is vaping at all better or worse by the data that we have at the moment? Obviously, it's very new, so we don't necessarily have the years and years of accumulated data that we do from smoking, tobacco, cigarettes. Is vaping necessarily better for you, or is it about the same? I mean, I'd really like to know whether that makes a difference too.
Yeah, it comes with another set of problems, and people, you won't find that people are hospitalized early on for smoking cigarettes.
No.
But vaping is bringing on more sudden and earlier onset issues where people are ending up in hospital or even dying.
Really?
And it's the whole popcorn lung thing as well that happens. So I would say each is as dangerous as the other. I just think that it's kind of more sudden with vaping. You're seeing more young people being affected and dying, whereas smoking kind of takes its toll after years and years.
What is popcorn lung? It's so gross. Just the sound of that.
I can't explain it medically, but when you're breathing, it's almost like you're wheezing, but you can feel the crackling. You can feel the crackling in your respiratory tract.
Does it sound almost like popcorn? Is that where it comes from?
Yeah, like little bubbles. It's actually it sounds like and feels like the bubbles being squashed out of a sponge.
Oh, that's very, very upsetting. Oh my God. I don't like that at all.
People with asthma can identify as well. If you don't have your asthma pump, you can feel that sort of crunchy, crackly feeling when you breathe.
That's not nice.
No. Have
you got popcorn lung? Have you ever had it?
I have, and it's more related to my asthma than anything else. But when I tried to, when I was working with one pulmonologist, they wanted me to try and go off of my inhaler for a while. And for weeks, I battled with this popcorn lung feeling until I just couldn't take it anymore and went back onto the inhaler.
Popcorn lung, won't you come and help Leigh-Ann today? Popcorn lung, won't you come? Popcorn lung. Do you like my song I wrote for you this morning?
So nice. Yeah.
Listen, these are ads that they actually used to have in magazines back in the 1950s and 60s. More doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. Camels.
We've got the doctor sitting back with his ciggy.
He's a creepy looking doctor, though. Huh?
Yeah, he doesn't look healthy.
This is another good one. 20,679 physicians. And they've got a little star there. God knows what that star, that asterisk, tells you. There's a nurse on the one side of the picture for people who can't see this. You're watching us live, you're listening. There's half the picture is a doctor holding a packet of Lucky Strike cigarettes. And it says, 20,679 physicians say Luckies are less irritating. And then the nurse on the other side, fresh?
She's into Camels.
She's into Camel, yeah. Smoke a cigarette today. Those are actual ads. I mean, here's Ronald Reagan, who became president one day, a couple of years later. My cigarette is the mild cigarette. That's why Chesterfield is my favorite. Ronald Reagan. That's Ronald Reagan in that ad. Why I smoke Chesterfield. And it's just the most incredible thing. He's got a Chesterfield in his mouth. I mean, when he became president, he wouldn't have been seen dead with a cigarette because by then they'd become very uncool.
Yeah, but again, it makes me feel so stupid as a human being. How many things are we promoting right now? It could be, kale smoothies or something that end up being detrimental.
Well, I mean, that's why I asked about vapes. These people, everybody's smoking a vape now. You see more of them than you see cigarettes in certain crowds. And I'm wondering if they're any better or worse.
Yeah.
Apparently, here, there's some people who smoke weed now, and they think that that's better, and that's probably safer for some people than cigarettes. Carl says, as a non-smoker, vape is much nicer. Doesn't stink, can still smooch without gagging. Kissing a smoker is like gargling a dead rat.
Ew.
So bad. That is so bad. Jean says, morning, guys. Thanks for an intelligent start to every day of the week. Well, thank you. I hope we don't disappoint on that level.
We can disappoint on that level many times.
This is a good point being made by Ethan. He says you get different levels of vaping. Level 5 is the highest, and that makes me cough when I vape. Level 3 or 4 is decent because you can obviously set the amount of smoke that the thing makes, right?
It's also got to do with the power of the nicotine that you buy.
Okay, right. Vaping, you get 2 concentrations of nicotine. 12 milligrams is the strongest.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know, but you see some of them, they make so much smoke that you could probably hotbox a car in like 3 or 4 puffs.
Yeah. Yes, it doesn't smell of anything, really.
In fact, this car pulled up in front of me at the off-ramp to the highway the other day. And then the guy or girl, because I couldn't see who it was, opened their window. And this cloud, a cloud came out of the driver's
like
side window.
Cheech and Chong.
Promise you. As a smoker, vape makes your throat really dry and cough more. I prefer cigarettes. Wow. Okay. Again, I don't know, but this is really interesting. So it's just something that I've seen recently. Do you want to know some really good news? And we've got to give credit where it's due. We talked about heroes this morning. We were talking about a guy in Kalk Bay at the Brass Bell who was a barman who jumped into the water when a freak wave hit and rescued a mother and child and some other people from drowning. That's a real hero. But here's another real hero. And this appeared on social media this morning. Humanity is moving forward. A British man has created an app that filters out all Kardashian news. Now, isn't that unbelievable? And it's a new app called #CardBlock, which is KARD block, will keep all mentions of the Kardashian and Jenner clan out of the user's news feed. Isn't that great news? I don't
know if it's just my algorithms, but they don't seem to be popping up in my feeds as much as they used to, whether
Well,
it's
maybe
news
people-
feeds, social media feeds.
It could be that people are also just over them. I mean, I could say I was over them by week 2, but for many people, they're still an important part of their newsfeed. I mean, there are still, I don't know where, but there must be people all over the world who are still hugely into the Kardashians. They still have shows on TV, don't they?
I think they've come to an end, but I think maybe
What?
we're watching the last season. I'm not sure.
No, they can't be finished.
Oh, Ethan
What will they
April is
do?
saying the new season is fire.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. So we're not paying attention. Here's something about the vaping. Vape juice is glycerine. You can make your own. Where do you buy nicotine, Steve? Because they're now having conversations in the comments section about where you buy your own stuff. It's amazing. It is mostly glycerine and something called ethylene glycol. And again, as a very poor organic chemist, I can tell you that we're probably not meant to breathe in clouds of glycerol and ethylene glycol. Just off the top of my head. Can't be great. If any of the doctors know, I'd love to hear about that, what people think of it. All right. Apparently, the Kardashians 2022 just started. So we got a whole new season to look forward to. Great. Great. So excited. Oh, that's awesome. And this is exactly where, who was it that was complimenting us on a smart start to their week? That's where they just tuned out. They're like, what, you're talking about the Kardashians? Are you out of your mind? Anyway. Apparently, some people saying you don't get popcorn lung from vapes. I don't know if that's true. And then you factor into that, but since we're talking about smoking, there are a lot of people who smoke habli or shisha as well. And apparently that is much worse than cigarettes. And I've done that a couple of times, but I can't. I've never smoked a cigarette. I wouldn't know how to. And I know from secondhand smoke inhalation, I wouldn't want to do that. But I've smoked like habli a couple of times, and I've smoked it regularly, and it's never really been a thing to me. It's like a social thing, you know?
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. So I wonder if that's worse for you or better. I'd be very interested.
I have no idea.
And I mean, in South Africa, we mustn't even start down the smoking track if we're not going to address alcohol, right? Because we're one of the big binge drinking countries in the world.
Yeah, I think Australia still beats us.
Well, there is, I mean, let me look this up because it came out just the other day. There was a survey that they just did. Worst binge drinking. Hang on, look this up. Countries.
Or you could say best binge drinking countries.
Would you say that? Oh, here we go. Chart the world's worst countries for binge drinking. Okay, here we go. Let's see how we do. All right. The worst countries. This is amazing. I would never have guessed. South Africa doesn't even come into the top 15.
Wow.
I would have thought we'd be like number 4. Maybe it's changed. All right. So here it is. This is according to the Indy 100, the independent newspaper Statista, and the World Health Organization. Okay. So seems legit.
Okay.
Let's go from number 10, France. Number 9, Moldova. Number 8, Paraguay. Bringing up the South American contingent there. Yeah, Paraguay. Belgium is at number 7. Greece at number 6. Finland, number 5. Lithuania, number 4. Yeah, Finland. Who would have guessed? The Czech Republic is number 3. Now, this is... Okay, so the number I'm going to give you now is the number of people... Sorry, the percentage of people who've had an episode of heavy drinking in the past 30 days. So that's for the month. All right. Lithuania, which was at number 4, 36.6% of Lithuanians had a heavy drinking episode in the last 30 days. Notice, no South Africa, the United Kingdom all the way down at 13 on this list.
Jeez.
And Mongolia is at 15.
So did they forget us out maybe? And Australia?
No. Let me give you the top 3. So number 3 country of the world's worst countries for binge drinking, and by that they mean winning countries for binge drinking. Czech Republic is at number 3. 38.9% of people had an episode of heavy drinking in the past 30 days. Ireland is at number 2. Now that I would have put them somewhere in there. I would have given the Irish, I would have given them cred. And Austria is the number 1 country. Austrian people, 40.5%. of Austrians had an episode of heavy drinking in the past 30 days. Almost half.
Jeez.
So there we go. And by the way, heavy drinking in this survey is defined as having more than 6 units or 3 pints of lager on one occasion. So that's the latest binge drinking chart. I don't know how we could have not been on that top 15. I would have sworn South Africa would be in there.
Yeah, I don't know if I trust that chart.
Yeah, it seems like
even though it
really
comes from credible sources.
Maybe we just didn't have the right statistics to fit in there. I don't know. Maybe ours, according to Carl, has moved from binge drinking to just being permanently drunk.
Yes, maybe it's that. There's a
Yeah,
difference
maybe we
between
just moved.
binging and drinking every single day, being drunk every day.
Don't know, but I think that's really, really interesting. I smoke weed and do mushrooms, but I hate alcohol, says John Bad Dog Hell No. Amazing. Again, I wonder what our rates of weed smoking in South Africa are.
Well, there's this article here that says binge drinking is a huge problem in South Africa, but the thing is that we can't admit it. So researchers are saying that the problem is likely to be much worse than what we're actually saying.
Okay.
And it comes into play where economists have actually measured how much we are drinking by our consumer indexes.
Maybe this survey that I just brought up now is much more recent, but I do remember us being up there. I'm pretty sure. Like Austria, Ireland, and Czech Republic are the winners here. I'm so disappointed, South Africa. I thought we had this one.
Maybe we're harder on ourselves than we should be.
What do you think? Maybe we're doing better, but we just don't keep good records?
Yeah, perhaps.
It's unbelievable. 6 units is like 3 double brandies. That's like a Tuesday before 4:30 p.m. for most Afrikaans men, says Daniel Nell. Yeah, I really don't know. We don't report heavy drinking here, according to Jean. We just pass out on the street.
There you go. And again, just having lived in a tiny town, you would go into these bottle stores where you kind of point to the bottom of the counter and they'd give you this unmarked, and it would literally be in like a 5-liter sunflower oil bottle.
No, man.
Yeah, and it looked the color of sunflower oil. It was kind of all of the bad stuff from the wine farms. So that stuff is not being reported or collected or any data being collected.
You used to drink that?
No, man. No, not me. This was.
I'm imagining you going, the stuff under the counter. That's what I'm here for.
No, this was the type of. This was the type of stuff in those small farming communities.
Okay.
They would be the people drinking that would kind of be lying down at the front of the bottle store, and you'd have to walk over them in order to go in and buy your wine.
Jesus, can you imagine? That's unreal. Yeah. Wow. Okay. Ugh. Let's change the subject. This is making me very uncomfortable. I almost preferred talking about the Kardashians. I can't believe I said that, but there we are. It's done. All right. So just one quick thing. I mentioned that Leigh-Ann had some info for us about the Mzansi Meat Company, which is making South Africa's first burger patty that they're actually making in a lab. So if you don't like the idea of binge drinking or smoking vapes or smoking cigarettes, maybe this is the kind of way that you could reverse that by helping the environment recover from all your bad and stupid and destructive behavior. Would you be able to eat a patty that was grown in a lab?
Well, I mean, let's be clear here that it has been done before, obviously, but the problem has been growing enough meat to actually make a meal. Now, this whole thing repulses me, right? Which is so weird because I will eat a whole cow's worth of meat without blinking an eyelid. Is that the right phrase?
Well, I hope not. Because if you're eating the eyelid, you've really run out of options. But yeah, if you think about how gross, let's just think about how gross the idea is. And I'm a carnivore like you, so
yeah,
I can somehow. This proves that I am also capable of huge cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
If you actually eat meat, like you buy a steak from the shop and then you cook it on a braai, we all like, oh, that's nice. That's what I'm going to do this weekend. I'm so excited about that. But if you imagine something grown in a lab, which is probably the good part of the meat, none of the like the gristle or the little tubes or any of that shit that you pretend not to notice when you're cooking meat. You pretend to not think about the blood or the fat or any of that stuff, but it's all there on your steak that you're going to cook in the braai.
Yeah.
Somehow,
So I mean,
somehow we're disgusted by the idea of meat grown in a lab, but we're not disgusted by meat taken off the dead carcass of a living animal.
It's so weird. It's
Right?
so weird how I'm still kind of more comfortable with having a slice of cold meat than I am a plant-based Vienna. It's so weird. It's all in the mind. So, I mean, if you think about how
Did I tell you I was they rumbled me the other day. I went to the shop and I bought what I thought was like sliced cold meat with pepper in it. And I got home and it was actually a vegan thing. It was a plant-based meat thing, but it looked like cold meat.
Yeah.
It looked exactly like those loaves of kind of pepper loaf or whatever that you get. And occasionally you want a sandwich because you don't want to have to cook something. You cut open a roll, put some butter on it, put a piece of cold meat on there with a slice of tomato and some salt and pepper, and that's your lunch.
Yeah. So did you end up eating it?
Well, I'd only realized when I used the last piece that it wasn't meat. I didn't, and then I was suddenly disgusted by it, which is, again,
This is how
so
weird.
it proves how stupid I am, because I didn't realize that it wasn't meat until I'd eaten the whole packet of it. There were only about 4 slices or 5 slices in there. But I really thought while I was putting it on the roll, I was like, wow, this looks good. And it tasted nice until I found out that it wasn't meat.
Yeah.
Then in
How weird.
my head, I was like, oh, someone's been tricking me. I've been tricked. I felt really stupid. I felt like I'd been completely bamboozled by the marketing. And then I read the thing and I suddenly realized, like, this has got no meat in it. How did I not see this in the shop?
It freaks us out. And it's the same as, I was watching some kind of program where they flashed to the future. Yeah. And they were all sitting around in this camp. Oh, they were from the future and they'd landed in the present. Yeah. And us kind of present beings try to help them out by giving them all burgers for dinner. Right. And when the kids realized that they were actually eating real cow, it freaked them out because they were so used to meat that had been grown in a lab.
Right.
So it's all trying to get your mind around it. But to grow meat in a lab takes absolutely ages. I mean, this Form Zanzi Meat Company has taken 2 years of research and development, and only now they've been able to successfully grow enough meat to make a meal. So it starts off as this tiny biopsy taken from a cow that is then nurtured to become.
That sounds so gross. I'm so pitiful.
How weird. So this punching a hole in the flesh.
Oh
in the meantime, we're butchering animals and just tearing the meat off the bones with our teeth.
Oh my God.
So of course this meat has the kind of flavor consistency of real meat without the guilt of rearing cows. But so let's see. When something starts in a petri dish, it kind of puts me off a bit,
Yeah, we were talking about this with Bakabantu on Thursday last week because he said, he grew up in the Eastern Cape and he used to have the cow was his pet for a while, and he thought, oh, these are such wonderful animals. And then later on, whoever it was, his dad or his uncle or whatever, said, oh, sorry about your pet cow, but we're going to need to eat that this month. And he had to make the transition. Like, we would never eat our pets, right? We'd be like, oh no, that's gross. How could you eat your pet? But we're okay with rearing cows for food. And then we won't eat something that's grown in a lab because we think that's gross. But as you say, we'll take meat from a cow that was grown on a farm, and we're perfectly okay with that. It's normal. Don't worry about it. Don't lie to me though. Don't lie to me and tell me I'm eating meat when it's made from something else like that cold meat that I bought last week. Or don't tell me it's lab grown, or don't tell me that it's not lab grown when it's the opposite. I want to know what I'm dealing with. So I mean,
just listen to this. In the Mzansi lab, the process started out back in 2019 as 5 cell lines of bovine, 3 of them muscle and 2 of them fat. Just shy of 2 years later, there was enough to make their very first meat samples, which ended up being fried in a pan and turned up into a bunch of meatballs, a mix from blending 30% cultivated meat and 70% plant-based binders.
Mm-mm.
And there's a picture of the scientist with this piece of meat on the end of a toothpick.
Oh my God. And that's all they've managed to grow?
No, they've made a full burger patty.
I don't want it, especially if it's taken that long to grow. Ugh. So Jared says, I once accidentally served my German father a plant-based sausage and he didn't talk to me for the rest of the evening. Yeah, that's exactly right. Don't mess with people's meat, he says. That's quite right. Hermine says, and this is so true, like this is gross, but we don't think about it as gross. I love getting a nice femoral artery in my meat. Chewy, says Hermine. Ugh. Mm-mm. And Jen says she knows exactly what kind of brand I'm talking about, where I was fooled into buying a plant-based cold meat. Well, cold meat, inverted commas. She says, I had it in my basket until I was at the till and reading the packaging, and then I put it back on the shelf. Ha, 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 she says. Well, I didn't see that until I'd eaten the whole. I was onto the last slice when I figured out what was going on.
Yeah, like if someone had said to me, Leigh-Ann, I've made this like vegetable terrine. It's amazing. I've put in like kale and carrots and corn and then I just kind of slice it up. Then I think I would be fine eating it.
Sure.
But because you've told me that it's...
But don't say it's a meat replacement or it's lab grown. We are so weird. This is such there's such a disconnect in our heads.
Yeah.
So ridiculous. Cows are actually very quiet when they're tamed. They play with balls. They come when you call them. They give hugs. Okay, Armina's trying to make us feel bad. It's not going to work. I love a steak, and a cow is still the best machine for turning grass into steak. So don't put me off. All right. It's time for Collectomania, everybody. This is brought to you by the South African Gold Coin Exchange and the Scoin Shop. And of course, every week we manage to get someone fantastic with an unbelievable collection. This week is no different. We're going to speak to Wayne Berger in a moment or two. Wayne is someone we've worked with at Cliff Central for years, since the beginning. In fact, Wayne was the one who managed to... Wayne, you're responsible for the name cliffcentral.com. You don't even know that, do you?
No, I do know that. We shared the options we had available to you and Rena.
That's right.
Yeah.
You gave us the URL. You said, listen, this is what I can get you guys. These are the URLs that are available. And one of them was cliffcentral.com. So when people go, oh, that Gareth's so full of himself, Cliff Central, it's all about him. He's the central thing. It actually wasn't me. It was you, Wayne. I'm going to send them your way, right?
Yeah, send them my way. I'll chat to them.
It's nice to see you, man. How are you?
You too. Yeah, thank God. All good. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic, dude. It's really, really nice to have you on the show this morning. And we're going to talk about your collection in a minute, but I'm just going to let everybody know what you actually do and how you've been working with us. You are a technology entrepreneur, and you and your business partner have been involved with helping us from a website point of view from the get-go. You've also given us plenty of really wise and sage advice along the way. So if anybody wants to know about your company, just tell us about that so that we can give you a bit of a plug at the same time.
Sure. Well, the company that works with Cliff Central is Ashak Digital Consultancy. We work more like a wholesale consultancy to digital players. Generally our clients are strong in the digital sphere, but in a specific realm, and we do more technical work. So for instance, like technical app development, our CTO, he's got a master's in AI, which is artificial intelligence. We also do the more technical online marketing, so search engine optimization. We do like AdWords, these sort of things. But yeah, we work as a, let's say, digital transformation company with our consultancy, and yeah, we've been going for quite a while now and had some really good results. And obviously, very proud of our work with Cliff Central, and yeah, proud of you guys for growing iconic online community.
Well, Wayne, it's nice to have you on for a totally different reason this morning, but I just got to say again, we've also loved working with you. But the nicest thing about what you do is that you're one of those people who you start new businesses all the time, and you've got a range of different businesses that you've been involved in, not just iShack. Tell us about your collecting. Where did that start, and how did it all become? Like, there's so many of us who have these passions, and everyone I meet now has some kind of collection. It might be bottle caps, it might be, expensive paintings, it might be teacups. We had one guy on who collects statues of liberty. So there are all kinds of weird things. How did yours start?
Yeah, so first of all, people can collect weird and wonderful things. On my side, I was always a big fan of sport memorabilia. When I was growing up, I was, very, very impressed with just collectibles and generally around sport. My favorite sport was soccer or football, and very much used to be in awe of some of the memorabilia that I would see. So what happened with me is that in my honors year, I did an investment honors, and one of our courses was contemporary investments. And I was actually with a good friend of mine. We were on the way to gym, and I was complaining to him. I was saying, look, I got this contemporary investment course I got to do a sort of project/thesis on it. I don't know what I don't like coins, I don't like art, and I was really sulking. And he said to me, well, why don't you do it on sport memorabilia? So I did a little bit of research, and the variables of sport memorabilia was very much similar to, the same as art and other contemporary investments. And so I started to do a little bit of research back then for my honors year, and I was I still am, unfortunately, an Everton fan. And at the time, there was Wayne Rooney was this teenager at Everton who had just played for England, and I had a contact where I could get a shirt. So I told my parents that I'm going to buy my birthday present here. I'm getting Wayne Rooney signed Everton and England shirt, and I ended up sourcing it. And there's a group called MSC Sports, and they were looking for some stock, and I ended up actually selling it to them and started to sort of source items from there. And
so you went from pretty quickly, and I mean, this again shows that you're a lot smarter than some of us. You went quite fast from being a collector to also being someone who traded in this stuff.
Well, what really happened is at that time I was finishing my honors, and it wasn't a good time to be a white male with very average marks, and I was trying to work out, what I could do next, sort of thing. So I sent out my CV to a lot of places, and I got rejected everywhere. Didn't really get any.
So it was survival more than trying to see an opportunity. It was survival, right?
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, first it started off from interest and necessity, because I had to do, something for this course. And then what happened, I played quite a lot of soccer, and I was part of a team that was meant to go to Chile for this tournament, and we had to do some fundraising at the time. So I said that a few of my teammates weren't happy with the providers around, and they'd seen sort of the stuff that I could get and had access to. So I said to them, don't worry, I'll source all the items. So I took all my bar mitzvah money, and I went and sourced all these nice collectibles. Really, at that time, they weren't, sort of after this period, it got flooded at like charity auctions, etc. But at that time, it was very unique stuff that I was able to get.
So I want to interrupt you for a second, because I think this is something a lot of South Africans can relate to. Sports memorabilia is probably one of the best collectible areas in South Africa, because I've been into many people's houses, and I'm sure you have too, Wayne, and you, Leigh-Ann, where you see at most guys, even if their wife is extraordinarily forgiving and understanding, most guys in South Africa have one corner of the house where they have either a bar or they have their little bit of sports memorabilia up on the wall, and they've always got like a rugby jersey or a picture of the 95 World Cup where every player's signed there or something like that. I mean, I've seen it in everybody's house with very few exceptions. So this is the stuff that you're talking about now. When you managed to source this is before it became very mainstream. But this stuff still fetches good prices. And I know I've been to a number of these charity auctions, after a golf game, for example, or when you go to some fancy dinner, someone is auctioning off some piece of sports memorabilia inevitably. And usually that's the thing that goes for a huge amount of money. That's what people really want. They want to say, oh, I've got that shirt that, this is the original rugby jersey that Chester Williams was wearing when he kicked this conversion, or you've got this piece of, here's a thread from Francois Pienaar's, rugby jersey or whatever. Everybody has one of these, right?
Correct. Yeah, so it's very popular, and especially when it's like topical, if it's the Rugby World Cup and there's a signed jersey, or South Africa's just won the World Cup, etc. At that time, the South African memorabilia was available. There were certain companies supplying it, but there wasn't as much international stuff. So for this particular tour, I went and as I was, just to recap, I took my barmy money. I got a whole bunch of really nice and collectible stuff. And I went, and my issue back then was people used to get these jerseys and then frame them very cheaply, and then want to sell it at auction for this very expensive price. So for me, I thought, you take an apple, you shine it. I sourced pictures from Getty Images, and we have a friend who's a writer, or was a writer, he's now a lawyer, but and he would write these nice articles on all the different pieces, and we'll put it on like, let's say, silver or gold plates, and made them look really good. The problem is our tour got cancelled, and I had put everything into these shirts, and one morning I'd wake up and look at all these items and think, wow, this is so cool, and the next morning I'd wake up and feel sick. I thought, I've taken everything I have and, put it into these shirts. And but where I was lucky, the soccer club, Beaufort Soccer Club, they needed to do a fundraiser. This was a club that I used to play for. The year after, they saw the items, loved them, put them up. They all sold for like record amounts. And I sort of, while I was still searching for a job, through that event, I was able to get into another fundraiser in Cape Town, and that went really well. And at that point in time, look, that was the best option I had available. So sort of.
So what do we know about the market? I mean, you've had this experience, but this was a long time ago. Yes. Is South Africa still a really fertile market for sports memorabilia? Because, as I said, a lot of people seem to have this stuff up in their houses. But does it really have the demand, and is there a supply that justifies it being maybe one of the biggest collectibles in the country?
Well, the thing about, first of all, especially online, 85% of what you find online is fake. There's a whole
85%.
85% of what you'll find online is fake. And we'll think about it. Well, look, first of all, there's different levels of, let's say, memorabilia or collectibles. You can get a signed item, and then you can get worn items. Worn, it goes on supply and demand. A worn jersey, especially an old worn jersey, there will be a supply of one. If it's more recent, then there's generally two per game. But if it's just a signed signature, there's a whole bunch of ways to fake signatures. And that's actually something that I studied during my course, was just different signatures. At that time, David Beckham was very popular. He was at Real Madrid. I focused actually on his signatures. And there's all different ways you can get a signature from let's say, a celebrity. And if it's in a signing session, you'd get a very nice signature. If it's like you see them at an airport, it should be a bit of a rough signature. And it's quite a.
Can you tell which ones are fake and which ones are not fake?
Well, first of all, you can't, if you're not there, you can't exactly tell for sure. But what I can tell you is that there's a good chance that this would be fake, or there's a good chance that this is real. Actually, when it comes to signatures, you have like pressure points when somebody's signing something. So even if the actual signature doesn't really look like his normal signature, but if the pressure point's in the same space, that would generally be considered a a genuine signature. But often you can see certain things where I say, no, that's definitely fake. And just something to put out there is, if you are interested in collectibles, or if you are interested, let's say, in signed sport memorabilia, you want to buy from a reputable firm. You ideally want to know when the signing session was.
Right.
What would happen is
usually people have a picture there as well of where it was actually signed, and they're in it, so you can prove that they were there at the time, right?
Well, this is it. You can get that sort of providence, but generally, it doesn't. Playing open cards, it doesn't actually matter if it's real or not in one respect. It actually only matters if the provenance or the proofs of this particular item are really strong. Because if it comes from a reputable source and everything is documented, they know when the signing session was, etc., or if it's like an official autograph supplier, then that will generally go much further than you getting it signed at the airport or buying it from someone who said they saw Cristiano Ronaldo at the airport and he quickly signed something for me.
Wayne, I just want to move on to some of the actual stuff in the collection, and some of this you may still have, some of it you may have moved on from. But what is this number 11? This is Brazil, right? What is that?
Yeah, that's Brazil. So in 1994 World Cup, I was crazy about, Brazil, and especially Romario. He's still probably my favorite soccer player today. And so this is an item I wouldn't want to sell. I still have it. It's just over there in our passage. And this was a worn jersey. These are my most collectible items. So just for interest's sake, if they are worn, then that's very collectible, because there's only a few. There's one or two per game. And this was in a warm-up game for the 1994 World Cup. Brazil won 8-2, and Romario scored a hat-trick. So it's actually signed in two spaces. Yeah, I mean, it's once again, if I was a little kid watching the World Cup and I saw this in my passage, I would say I made it. So that's one that I'm very happy with. Yeah.
All right, here's my favorite team. This is Argentina. It looks like that is a 1986.
So that's actually 1979. It was worn by Maradona versus Bolivia, and it's
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's quite a. I mean,
fortunate you never wash a worn thing, right? But if you did Maradona's, you could probably get like 8 grams of cocaine out of it.
Well, there we go. So yeah,
you wouldn't need to use you wouldn't need to use washing powder. It already comes with powder.
No. If I just break that down and sold it, in the little particles that come off, I'll get a good return. So it's quite a safe bet, that one.
All right. What about this? This is a rugby ball signed by who?
Yeah, so that's a rugby ball signed by Pienaar, Stransky, and Mandela. Obviously, 94 World Cup. And the problem with this particular ball, unfortunately, and let's say if anyone is going around trying to get signatures, on the ground, is that this actual ball is like evaporating. It's so old that it's like breaking into pieces. It's a little bit sad. It's quite a nice historic ball, but the actual quality of this Gilbert ball is literally breaking. So it's
God, that's terrible. So and there's nothing you can do once that has faded and fallen apart. Then the collectability of it is diminished so far that no one will buy it, right?
Well, it loses definitely. Look, different people are interested in different things, and they may want it even if it is going south per se. But if you are a collector and you do have something signed with whatever pen, try keep it out of sunlight, because besides for that ball, depreciating as it is, the signatures can also fade if they're in the sun.
Does that apply? This is a boxing glove. Is that Mike Tyson?
That's Mike Tyson, yes.
Wow, that's pretty
cool. So this one I sold a little while ago, also from a signing session. This is just a signed item, not a used item. But I used to either source for specific charities to help them raise funds, or used to source for specific collectors that would want to, let's say, decorate like a TV room or bar, etc. So just that was one that I sourced for a particular client.
This is a lot more interesting to me than the than the Mike Tyson glove. This is a poster of some beautiful woman. And it's, what is this all about? And it's not signed or anything. Is this a piece of memorabilia?
Yeah, well, for me, if you pull it up on the screen, what happened there? So for me, what are really collectibles? They're memories, really. So World Cup Rugby '95, where were you when we won the World Cup, etc. The feeling, where this particular piece of memorabilia, it's memorabilia for me. It's priceless. We were in Brazil in, when was it? Around 2003, I think 2003, and we were traveling or backpacking, and we were between two places, Salvador and a place called Arroyo de Juda. We were catching a bus, and the bus was coming whenever, we never knew when. And we ended up with a few friends of ours that I was traveling with. We ended up finishing all the beers at this bus station. Then we played some soccer with some Brazilians at the bus station. And while we were there, this was the poster on the wall selling beers. I found it quite unique in Brazil. At that time, a lady in a bikini holding a beer, and that's how they sold their produce.
Now that's very sexy. So you've got that up on your wall to remind you of the actual World Cup that you went to. What's this over here, Wayne? What's going on here? This is someone swimming in, where is this? In the Antarctic?
So that's in Norway. That's I'm sure you would know Lewis Gordon Pugh.
Of course.
Yes. So that's old Lewis. Funny enough, years ago I sold and I helped the Organ Donor Foundation raise funds, and we put up a Muhammad Ali glove. And Lewis at that time was running the Organ Donor Foundation. And after we had this really good auction, I was sitting in his office and he's telling me a story. And he says, I do this cold swimming. And he starts to tell me what he does. And I thought, you know what? I've never heard more rubbish in my life. And then he said to me, well, you want to see a documentary? I was like, sure, go for it, whatever. Let's see what you got. And he then went on to show me this BBC documentary on him swimming through Norway. And
you didn't know any of this when you were speaking to him? You had no idea?
Absolutely not. I thought he was talking. I thought this is the biggest load of rubbish I've ever heard. And after the documentary, my jaw had already dropped. And we started chatting after that. And he wanted to give the King and Queen of Norway his, let's say, memorabilia. So he had two different kits that he wore on this particular world record swim. So the one I packaged all together, and then this kit, which had his cap, his goggles, and then his costume, I sold the others, or I put the others up for a charity to raise funds, and I kept this one, which also sits in my passage.
But I mean, you talk casually about being in Lewis Gordon Pugh's office, but here's you with Pele. Now that's a memory for lifetime. I mean, this is probably the world's, certainly in the top 3 of the world's most legendary football players of all time. And you're in a picture with him. And I assume you've still got that shirt that he's holding there with you.
Yeah, so in 2006, Pele came through to Johannesburg, and I ended up helping the organizers with their signing sessions, and it was quite was a very cool experience. I was actually very impressed with Pele. He had a lot of time for everybody. He also took a lot of time signing the different items. His signature is one of the most, I think him and Ali were the two most forged signatures at the time, and probably still today. It's quite a basic signature. And so we hosted the signing session, and when I took this picture with him, he was like shocked with this jersey, because he says, how did I get it? It's actually a 1970 worn jersey by Pele. And why this is significant is that if you see above the badge, there's 3 stars, and each time a soccer team wins the World Cup, they get a star above the badge.
Right.
So this was the first jersey that he wore with 3 stars. Why this match happened was a match between Mexico and Brazil at the Maracanã, was because Brazil beat Italy in the World Cup final in Mexico, and the Mexicans all supported Brazil. And to commemorate that match and the support they got from the Mexicans, they had this game at the Maracanã. So this was the first jersey that Pele wore with 3 stars. So that's the sort of thing that gives these sort of collectibles
that's so special.
value. Yeah, it's just the romance around the story.
That's beautiful. Now, what's this sandy? This is a baseball card. We don't get a lot of these in South Africa.
Yeah, so it's quite. When I was young, I actually liked baseball and baseball cards, and I used to collect a few. And one day, I got kicked out of class at school, and I went with a friend into this like old shed at the school, and in like a corner, hidden away, we found a old baseball cards. It must have been confiscated by a kid at some time, but this is from 1966. And yeah, it's quite crazy. And so I sort of kept them, with baseball cards, you need to keep them in great condition. These weren't in the greatest condition, so I just sort of kept it away in these sort of like, what do you call them, like plastic sleeves. And Sandy Koufax specifically was a well-known pitcher and still well-known today. And
have you had this valued, Wayne?
I've sort of looked online, and that there are better structures when it comes to baseball cards and values. But I think like 50,000 rand.
I've heard stories about these baseball cards. Some of them can fetch you like tens of thousands of dollars if they're rare enough. And I mean, Americans, there are loads of people in the US who've been collecting these for 100 years, or maybe a little bit less than that. So it's quite a thing. That's a whole separate collection. Listen, I'm afraid that's all we got time for this morning, but this is an incredible collection. And I don't know, I don't know that we've had anyone who does the sports collecting on. So really happy it could be you, and that you could share with us some of these absolutely incredible memories. I mean, you with Pele, you with Lewis Gordon Pugh. I mean, these are really amazing things. These are great memories. So good of you to share them with us. And thank you, Wayne. Good to see you, man.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you too. And keep smiling. Cheers.
Always. Thank you, Wayne. What an awesome guy. What an awesome collection. I just love this.
Yeah, that's on another level. That's certainly not what you've got in your lapa that's covered in in daddy long legs,
I love it. Collectomania is brought to you by the South African Gold Coin Exchange and the Scoin Shop. You can check them out at scoinshop.com. That's coin shop with an S in the front.com. And if you're a collector of interesting, unusual things, or you know someone who is, get in touch with us. We want to hear from you. contact@cliffcentral.com. That's how we get to hear from interesting people like Wayne. And we want to hear from you if you've got a collection too. Let us know. We're very, very keen. All right, everybody, have a happy Monday. We will see you tomorrow, bright and early at 6 a.m. Thanks, Ass. We'll see you tomorrow.